Okay, thank you very much, Professor Shams, for the very insightful presentation. I'm really proud of my colleagues of NYAB. Really, all these three presenters, Dr. Manuel, Dr. Sajid, and Dr. Shams, made wonderful presentations. And I myself was reached by their presentations. Now, I would like to request our knowledgeable members, the panelists, first of all, Professor Mohammad Atal Karim sir, to deliver his opinion, his comments, his suggestions, anything else, any criticism on the slides, over the slides, or anything about else. So I'll request Professor Atal Karim sir, and we are sorry that our time is a bit limited. We allocate 10 minutes, sir, for you to deliver your speech. Professor Atal Karim.
Assalamu alaikum. It will be much shorter, I can assure you. First, I was so impressed by the three presentation, and I know I was privy to examine two of the presentation last night because I received them advanced copies. They are so thoroughly done. And one I just received a few hours ago. Again, it's also very thoroughly done. So what I wanted to kind of tell is, I think the last speaker kind of summed it up all, is that you start from the right side and don't go too far to the left or the red side. So I will try to help make a case perhaps slightly different while staying true to the metrics and to where we need to actually publish and where we should not. So whether we like it or not, I checked out Scopus last night. In 2020, it lists 34,100 journals in all possible areas, possibly the largest base in 2020. Despite that 34,000 journals, which have citable records, one thing should be clear: there is no shortage of publishing in the right kind of journals. That's number one point. Questions were raised about the corporate control of the journals, such as Elsevier or Springer-Verlag. And these are real issues. There's no question about it. In my universities over the last 7-10 years, and all the years that I knew even before I came here, is every year I'm fighting the battle of how less money I'm going to give to the library. And then the librarian is trying to make a decision which journals they need to subscribe for one more year. In the case of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, so therefore all universities have ganged up together and we buy in bulk. Anything bought by, for example, Boston University would be available with me. Anything I subscribe will be available, let's say, to MIT or Harvard, as the case may be. So these are there are states, particularly California and Massachusetts, who have begun the trend of fighting the corporate monopoly on books and journals. Now, if I go beyond that a little bit, and I want to narrow down to Bangladesh, because that's where the majority of the attendees are. And this particular site was already cited. It was called Bangla Journal Online, though was not stated, but I have been tracking this Bangla Jol for a little more than 15 years. So in 2011, this site listed 73 journals. 10 years later, by 2021, it lists 143 journals as of this morning. That's literally double in Bangladesh alone in that particular website. Of these 143 that exist, I want to give you some statistic for us to understand that of these 143, only about 9 to 10, so that's like 1/15th number of journals, even which are possibly not predatory, only about 1/15th of this journal are listed either or could be classified as quartile 3 or quartile 4. The only exception was a particular journal, which happens to be Journal of Health, Population, and Nutrition, which is ranked actually in quartile 1. And this is published by ICD-BRD. This particular journal within the past 3 years has actually been taken over by National Institute of Health in the United States. So you can take that. So about 1/15th of these journals are barely either in quarter 3 or quarter 4. Now, I want to go a little bit farther and deep in it to understand that 57 of 143, that's 40% of these are published by the universities. 17 of these 143, as of this morning, no longer publishes. 8 are from Dhaka University, 8 from Rajshahi University, 3 from Stanford, 2 from Jahangirnagar University, 2 from Chittagong University, and then there is a whole slew of the remaining journals. 1Cs and 2Cs are from every types of schools and colleges. Alphabetically, you can start with Anwar Khan Modern Medical College and keep on going down this whole list. Now, I think what I wanted to tell, because I also graduated from Dhaka University, I have a sensitivity, so I went and checked his website. Its website actually lists there are 17 journals that this university produces, 17. Although Banglajol lists only about 8. So there are another 9 journals that Banglajol does not know. The tragic part is of these 17 journals that are coming out of Dhaka University, my alma mater, only 1 is associated with citable documents. Rest are not. So where I'm going with all of that, so as you are trying to figure out how to stay on the right side and don't go to the red side, here are my personal suggestions. And I think one of the audience member texted me, and so I'm responding to it. Typically, if the journal is produced by a professional society, you can bet a little bit more that there will be non-predatory journals. Most likely they are managed by and run and peer reviewed by the type of people we want that they should be peer reviewed. However, as I say this, when I say professional societies, and I know the first speaker or second speaker cited gave some examples of IEEE, OSA, SPIE, PubMed, and gave many of these professional societies, and they're in every different discipline. In Bangladesh, other than the 57 of 143, so 60% of the journal even listed in Banglajol, they are not produced by universities and colleges. They are, in my view, have a little bit more respect than those that are produced by universities and colleges, Dhaka University included. And all of these goes back, unfortunately, to a Dhaka University ordinance of 1973. Nobody wants you to talk about it because it is very emotionally touched. But I'll tell you that our slide in journal and reputation and promotion and tenure goes back to this singular ordinance. And since 1973-74, almost every other university, including the University Grants Commission, has embraced this particular ordinance that guides who can be hired who can be promoted, what is needed to be promoted and not. And so these are driving long before the digital age came in as to why we are seeing this plethora of journals. So again, I just want to kind of voice what the three speakers said. Again, I thank them very much. And I will join my third speaker who said, we want to be aware and stick to the right columns and not submit ours to the left column. You might see some of the young friends might think it's pretty easy, but I can assure you based on my experiences throughout life, you're going to get caught. It's just a matter of time. Even if you don't get caught, I believe you will get caught to your own soul. But literally, professionally, these are not something productive that you want to, especially the younger people. You have a bright future, a long future ahead of us. So I would request everyone not to get colored into this fast publishing track record for which Bangladesh seems to be now a mecca of the many neighboring countries. Just for the heck of it, I picked up one of those journals today. Don't want to name this particular journal. Well, it's being managed by the editor is from one of the universities in the Bangladesh. But then it says its corporate office is in Houston, Texas. And I think all the symptoms that we got from the three speakers, it will not take too long for you and I to figure out which is predatory and which are not. So I wish you well. And I think great groundwork has been done by our three speakers. I thank them profusely. And I'm glad that I was able to learn a lot from these three. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Atal Karim, sir. It's really inspiring speech. And right now, we'll come back again to you, sir, with some questions from the audience. But right now, I'd like to invite Professor Muhammad Ashraful Alam to deliver his speech, his comments and thoughts on the slides or anything else on this topic. May I welcome Professor Ashraful Alam.
Yeah, thank you. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, yes.
First of all, just like Professor Karim, I'd like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to actually not so much to speak, but to join and listen to the three wonderful talks. Frankly, I don't think about predatory journals often. We are often focused on research. There are plenty of deep problems to work on. And we know the journals that we wish to publish. So therefore, I don't think about it often. But this has been an eye-opening experience for me. You know, the job of a panelist is to sort of either deepen the discussion in some way or broaden the discussion. So you have already heard from Professor Karim about sort of a more specific Bangladeshi context of the Bangla journals and his advice regarding this. I'd like to broaden it a little bit and more come from a more historical angle. You know, the best way to answer this question, where not to publish, is by answering the question that why we publish. Of course, as you know, that publications come in different forms. Everybody publishes. Even the coronavirus, they publish their DNA. The cave paintings in France, that's also a type of publication. The edicts of Emperor Ashoka on stones, that's publication. And obviously the books from Aristotle to all other big scholars and all, those are publications of different sorts. So everybody publishes. But the publication in the journal form has a very specific history. And I think the problems that we see in the modern world is embedded or was present in the birth of this journal movement. The first journal was published in 1666, the same year that we sort of we hear that apple dropped on Newton's head, and in that same year that he came up with the laws of motions that we know about, the theory of gravitation, calculus, and all these things. And so this is in 1660. Same year there was this horrendous pandemic going on, and the Royal Society that 1666 started this journal publication. It came from three things. One was the East India Company, because there were so many people going all across the world, both the Dutch and the British East India Company, the flood of new type of knowledge coming from all over the world was sort of flooding in the Royal Society. So they wanted things to be communicated more efficiently. The second was, of course, the books. People used to publish books, but that used to take many, many decades before they published, and many times authors died before the book was ready for publication. And the other form was sending letters. As you know, people used to send letters to each other, just like sending emails. And in those days, and therefore that was also very inefficient, because Newton's letter to somebody else maybe just read by a few people. So journal was an efficient sort of response at that time. But the reason, so this was a good thing, good side of the journal, that it will be more efficient, that later the discussions will be published more compactly. But as you know, from the very beginning, the people who pushed for the publication was not a scientist. He had a printing press, and his goal was to make money, and he got a king's edict, king's charter, that he will be able to publish without competition for a certain number of years. And his main motivation was, of course, making money, not communicating per se the great sciences. Of course, that can happen simultaneously. And then second thing it started was this elite, class of elites and gatekeepers. And as you know very well, how Newton, for a long period of time when he was the president of the Royal Society, how he sort of politically manipulated the process and sort of to get more credit. He already had much, but still more credit for the work he did. I'm bringing up all this because this idea that journals can be a non-profit organization simply cannot exist. Even the archive that is well respected and all, Cornell University has to spend a humongous amount of money to keep them alive. So journal will, by definition, will be a economic and financial, it will have that angle, and it will always have, even the best journals would have a elitist and gatekeepers type of things, which will also prevent from people from publishing in these journals unless you are from certain class of universities, certain types of association you can prove. So that makes getting to the very right, as Professor Karim was saying, extreme right, let's say Science and Nature or Proceedings of National Academy publishing, so difficult. So I will just conclude with two things. I think this was already sort of alluded to in Professor Tariq's talk. I think I worry about this type of predatory journals for two reasons. One is sort of when you spend a lot of my time and money and trying to sort of get a paper ready and get published. And previously, when I was younger, there is no Google. So therefore, if you published in a journal which was not indexed or which was not available easily, then that work was essentially lost, as if the work has never been done. And so that was a big concern. After Google, I'm no longer sure that concern any longer exists. Whether you publish in a predatory journal or not, I can find it in Google, and most of the time when I'm searching through something, looking for some material, I don't really pay attention to what journal it is. I can look at the abstract, and in a few minutes I can check whether the work is good or not. And so as a consumer, Google helps me to sort through or sift through a lot of material. So as a consumer, I'm not really that much affected. But what is really the real trouble, and that is what I want to conclude with, is this loss of culture of excellence. That's the more insidious or pernicious effect of publishing in lower quality journals. As we know that, we all know that excellence breeds excellence. And this is why you will always see that a group of people always emerge together, excellent people emerge together. When you think about Socrates, you will see also Plato and Aristotle coming very close together. When you think about Shotten Bosch cannot arise on their own. Shotten Bosch has to have Meghnad Shah, C.V. Raman, Jagadish Chandra Bose, all in the same group, in the close proximity. Because when you write, you do not write so far, you write also for the respect of your colleagues. You know, when Rabindranath Thakur, when he comes, he cannot come alone. There are also Nazrul with Jivanananda Das, with Buddhadev Basu, with this Amiya Shah, and so therefore a whole set of people come together because they sort of define an internal culture of excellence. And just like excellence breeds excellence, mediocrity also breeds mediocrity. If you see your colleagues getting promoted after publishing in a third-rate journal, after a while, you sort of also start doing the same thing. And the students who are with you, they begin to sense the similar type of, that you don't really want to ask the hard questions. You don't want to wake up 6 o'clock in the morning or in the middle of the night thinking about a science problem. You are just trying to get promoted and get a little bit of salary rise here and there. And then you begin to justify that the students are not good, investments are poor, and gradually you begin to expect a little less of yourself. And I think this loss of ambition and loss of imagination is the true cost of publishing in a culture of publishing in a journals that are not really top rated. And that is what I would like to end with, that, all this matrix, all these numbers and all these are of course helpful, but we all know why we publish in a lower ranked journals. The same people, if they went to MIT, they would be publishing in a different type of journals because they would be working a little harder, they will be thinking a little, and they will be hoping to get recognition and prestige from their colleagues. And this is what I think we need to be particularly careful about. So that's all I had. Thanks again for the opportunity. And as always, it's a great pleasure to attend this event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Ashraful Alam, for your nice presentation. Actually, this is inspiring, really inspiring. The last few sentences are really, really amazing to us. Actually, we are right here. We are facing numerous problems. First of all, not only all the young researchers are doing became crazy to publish a huge number of papers to enhance the number of papers. This is not true for only for the young researchers. Even some older researchers, some experienced researchers are still doing the same thing from here, and their students are being inspired also. So when I see that a professor from here is publishing the news of an article of his published article in Facebook status. First of all, he is writing, this is a Q1 journal, imperfect or is this. Without writing the content of the paper, he is writing the metric of the journal that is ultimately inspiring his students to go to the pace of metric, go to the pace of Q1, Q2, Q3, this, such kind of things. So at the end of the year, a professor is writing, I have published 10 papers, 20 papers. So these are things are actually creating a bad culture in our country. That's why we are very actually shocked, and we think that is somehow our responsibility to make some awareness so that our young researchers know the true things, know the right practice. So that's why actually this is the main objective of the organization of this kind of webinar. And sir, thank you very much for your words. Right now, I'd like to invite Professor Tariq Rahman. He's working actually on journals, metrics, and other things. He's very experienced, and I welcome Professor Tariq Rahman for delivering his speech. Professor Tariq Rahman.
Thank you very much, Professor Basit. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, please. Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry, my voice is a little down because I'm having fever, but still I shall try to say a few things. Once again, thank you very much for inviting me and joining this session. I have really learned quite a bit today, which I did not think in the past, although I was working in this area for some time, but still there are many things that I learned today, especially with the working group of Professor Abdullah Shams, and then insights from Professor Athawal Karim and Muhammad Ashraful Alam and so on. So thank you very much. And it is, it is a very good thing for me that you put me at the end, because I don't have to say anything actually, because most of the things are already covered by all of you. So I can simply say thank you very much, and then let's go for the question and answer session. That'll be easier, maybe. But anyway, I would like to highlight a few things, which is my kind of favorite area, which is a gray area of this predatory journal issue. And that there are always some gray area, like the spectrum Professor Abdullah Shams was showing there. There is a green to red and then some gray area there. And in this gray area, if I can name you, with my personal experience, few things that, a few years ago, one of my students, she wanted to have a paper published, and then she needed that for her graduation, but her paper was not accepted, rejected by a number of journals. And the requirement from our university was that it has to be published in a impact factor journals. The journal must have an impact factor. So she was hunting, for some journal which has impact factor and she can publish it. And the reason she was not able to publish in a good journal is because she needed few experiments to do, but she doesn't have time as well. Because our requirement is that we have to have a graduate on time, which is called GOT, and very specific time for scholarship. And at the same time, we have to come up with a number of publications. So at the end, I called her and I told her that find a journal where you can pay the open access fee and then submit it. And then she came up with the solution. She gave me a name, which has an impact factor of 3+, and the paper was accepted in 3 weeks' time, which has an impact factor of 3.4 and above. Now, is this journal a predatory journal? If you ask with any criteria, rigorous review process, editorial team, they do not have extensive soliciting emails and so on, it is not a predatory journal at all. But still, if I look at the outcome and the way they handle the paper, I am a bit confused about it. At the same time, if you go to other journals, for example, if you look at Nature Communication, their article processing fee is $5,500 and above, more than that. So if you look at those journals, you shall see that the more they have impact factor, higher their article processing fee. Is this a predatory in nature in their approach, or is it really they need that amount of money because they have a higher impact factor? So these kind of questions actually, put me in a confusion that there is a, really a gray area to define what is predatory journal and what is not. And this is why, Dr. Mainul showed one slide that Nature come up with an article that they said that there is no definition of predatory journal. And the reason, and that is a reality, that there is no actual definition of it. And the basic reason is that the article processing fee charged by these famous journals, and sometimes the way of their rejections is not always fair. There was a paper which I remember they published it, having a survey among the people who published their papers in the predatory journals. One of the most common reasons they showed is that the Western journals do not accept their paper easily. That is why they have to, resort on those predatory journals. So there are many practical issues which are basically, suffering, causes a lot of sufferings to many of us. Now, the point that I also wanted to highlight, that why we publish in the predatory journals, which was mostly answered by Professor Ashraful Alam, that the reason we publish it because we see that our colleagues are publishing it and they're getting promotion, they're getting a job very easily. So we are kind of competition behind the scene. So we have to survive this competition. If my colleague has 300 publications and I do not have, as a professor, then I feel inferiority complex. That what kind of situation that I am in. That I am a professor, I do not have 300 publications, but my colleagues have. My colleague who supervised a master's student, and at the end of the master's degree, the student published 12 papers, and this is the reality. But I was not able to publish even 4 papers during my PhD. I did not allow my PhD student to publish more than 2 papers because it doesn't work in that way in my evaluation. So this kind of reality is there. So the question is that the gray area is there, and the second question is that why predatory journal exists is because of us, because of the academician. If you look at ourselves, that we use those numbers of those journals. University vice chancellors, they look at the CV and they say, oh yeah, this guy has 200 papers, so he is more eligible for these positions than the other guy who has only 50 or 30 papers there. So it is the university vice chancellor, it is the university teachers, lecturers, or researchers. Because of their actions in one or another way, these predatory journals exist. And if you look at this, although Professor Ashraful Alam again went back to the history of these economic viability and how these economic venture or corporate issues about the journal existence, but still, if you look at it, that whenever there is an opportunity of having more and more money, earn more and money using this venue, why not? People will definitely go for it. I can give you a very, very interesting practical example that a few years ago, a group of people from China, they approached me and they told me that they will give me around 20,000 Malaysian ringgit, which is $5,000 US, for one paper to be published. And the idea is that they will give me the data from China, and the only thing I have to do is that I have to write the paper for them, and then I shall be one of those authors, and they will be the corresponding authors, and so on. And then the main reason for them to ask me is that so that I can write it in a way that it will be published in a impact factor journal. So now those are the people who are working in university in China, and they are coming to us who are also working in university. So at the end, I rejected those company, but my colleague accepted them, and he worked with those people, and then eventually he published those papers, and those venture actually were successful there. So now all the examples that I'm giving you to point out that it is us who are actually responsible for all of those things. And it is, if you look at it, young generations are tempted or are forced to do it. And if you look at the older generations, the policymakers, if we are strict at that level, younger generations will never do that. So definitely we need to make awareness among them, and that's what you are doing. This is a very wonderful thing, very important thing to do. But at the same time, what I think most important for us is that we need to tell the policymakers, the authority, that what to count and what not to count. Do we really have to count that who has 200 publications for a job, or do we really have to think that who has the ability to do research or not? So those are the things that are more important to control this issue of predatory journal. So, and this is one of the reasons that recently we published a paper which we call as an author categorization. So in this paper, we actually proposed an index that we call as Author Performance Index, or API. So using this index, what we basically proposed is that if you want to evaluate an individual or a researcher for his contribution in the scientific world, you have to see that what was the actual contribution in a paper or not. So that is why we have categorized these authors, and then when we categorize it and then we calculate his actual contribution, and then you can see that out of 200 publications, basically what is his actual contribution, and then use it there. So this is how that we cannot get rid of the predatory journals. We cannot simply stop our young generations not to publish, because our older generations are already having 300, 400 papers in their CV. So they are naturally going after that number. They will be going after that number. We cannot stop it. That is a reality. And there are another reality is that today there are 114 journals published from the Bangladesh, which was 10 years ago, half of it. It will increase. Definitely it will increase, because we have now more than 100 universities in the country, and we have how many lecturers. The number of lecturers and professors are increasing there, and all of them, they will need publications. And Nature and Science and Cell or PNAS and Lancet are not going to publish their papers. So definitely those journals, number of those journals are also going to be increased a lot. So the total problem is with us, with our policymakers. That is what the root of the problem, if not the total problem. Root of the problem is with us. And if we can minimize or if we can come up with a very, very controlled policy to calculate, to measure the impact of an individual as a scientist, as an author of a scientific article, then I think it will be easy for us to control the predatory journals. With that note, I thank you once again for this wonderful session, and I have really learned a lot. Thank you. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you very much, Professor Tariq Rahman, for your advice and suggestions. Okay. Right now, actually, we'll start our discussion session, and I must apologize if there is anyone from other countries. I'll just say that now we'll use the bilingual. The audience can ask us any question in Bangla or in English. So I apologize. If any foreigner is there, you can also ask questions in English, but some of the audience may ask the question in Bangla, so we'll accept it. So I have some questions already in the chat box. First of all, we'll go through them. Okay, and in the meantime, if anyone would like to ask any question, please raise your hand. So first question was there from the audience. Can someone comment on professional society journals versus published, I meant I think commercial based journal. So maybe Professor Atal Karim sir may answer this question. So comment on professional society journals versus commercial journals actually. So you give some hint in your presentation. If you can elaborate it in Bangla.
Yes, so I'll give an example maybe from my own field, that if I were to take a chance to publish my work in an IEEE journal or American Physical Society journal or Optical Society of America journal or SPIA journal, I can be rest assured that these are not predatory. On the other hand, even within commercial side too, there are a large number of journals which are not predatory. So I could not wholesale dismiss the commercial journals. I know there is a movement behind the scenes, that there's a movement to asking people not to edit or work on the editorial board of commercial journals. I think that movement is not going to succeed, because over time, the commercial entities has been recruiting more and more successfully, more and more academicians to push higher integrity manuscripts and publications. So I don't think we can wholesale just say, I'm not going to publish in Elsevier journals or Wiley journals or Springer Verlag journal. I don't think we are going to do that, or Taylor Francis journal. I think a lot of us will do, because many of those journals are not predatory, you can be rest assured about it. On the other hand, which are predatory journals is very clear. It does not take a genius to figure it out. And I think that's what our speakers kind of highlighted. so that we avoid the extreme red on the left side of the screen. And I think you yourself gave the hints as to how to figure it out. I mean, you just get 1 or 2 emails and you figure out right away this is not where it is. But Professor Alam kind of told it all. It's when we see what is happening around amongst my colleagues, amongst my senior, that's where I am driven, and I don't want to push myself to excellence, and I get focused on how many did I publish last week. Once we do that, then we have sacrificed our real purpose of research. And I think that's in the end is a question between you and your soul. And I am going to revisit the same thing. The situation in Bangladesh was not as green until it was 1973, because that ordinance kind of defined who could be recruited, who could be promoted, what is going to take promotion, which party should you belong to, what color panel you are. All of those things are becoming more important in your progression. On the other hand, I'm heartened by the fact, especially younger faculty members, and I've visited some of the labs and groups in different universities, including yours, if you remember that, is that I'm so impressed by what you are driving, despite what is happening at the higher level of the university. If you are expecting miracle to happen from there, I have to be a little bit pessimistic on that. This is not going to happen in Bangladesh. You cannot count that those changes are going to come from the top, because most of the people from the top, they were recruited with wrong reason for wrong political alliance. How do you expect them to make any change in any of the ordinance? It will not happen. Don't want to bore you. Just to prove this point, some 10 years ago, I took every chancellor of the main 4 or 5 universities, and I tried to figure out, thanks to Google, how many ever published anything? Where did they publish? Did anybody cited that work? And I can tell you, you cannot expect miracle from that group of people, because they have not done anything that you and we people are shooting for. So again, I want to encourage that. Don't wait on the top level to make the changes. I don't think they will, but just as Professor Ashraf Alam said that, if you hold higher standard, you will force and push your neighbor, people you're associating with, and you rise together. It's going to take time. You have begun a process, and I sincerely believe it's going to take time. And again, Professor Alam said a lot of historical facets. Only yesterday, I saw on Physics Today another article of why this particular scientist who was in England, why did he move from New Zealand to England and to Canada back to England? Because he was trying to have fast communication with his colleague before somebody else does, because he was also trying to beat somebody else on the whole area of radioactivity. But that's besides the point. I think we have lost sight. Institutions are doing that. And again, I also have to say that many institutions are already aware of these things. So it's not quite correct to say promotion tenure process is just looking for impact factor-based journal, because it does not measure that work. So while it may be good for a candidate to say that, okay, the impact factor is this, but they also have to say how many times your work was cited, how many times it was self-cited by yourself, how many times did you, how many times it was cited by others, what was the trend over the last 5 years, 6 years. I think those are the things that gives confidence to the promotion process. But that's only when people are looking objectively. In the case of Bangladesh, unfortunately, this isn't happening. But again, I just want to tell you, young folks, you are the one who are going to change this country forever and can. And don't trust those old folks like us, because they are not going to make any difference. They are set on their ways because it's comfortable. They want no challenges, no fear. And I have gone to many of these labs. Most of the labs are hidden because nobody's supporting them lab, but amazing works are coming out of it. So again, I thank you very much. Please keep on working. And I think that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. So you visited our lab and our students are really inspired by your presence
Yes,
there.
I
And
did.
still we remember it, your visit in our lab. So we have another question actually. So I'm asking again, if anyone would like to ask any question directly, please raise your hand. I have another question. Is there any standard way to follow for getting more citations for my paper? So someone from the audience asked. So may I ask Professor Ashraful Alam to answer this question? Is there any standard way to follow for getting more citations for my paper? Professor Ashraful Alam, are you there? Probably he is not there. Okay. So, okay.
I think I can answer.
Oh, he's right there. Okay, good.
Yeah, the way I think about how to get more citation is what Dirac once mentioned, was that the farther you look back in answering a question, the farther it in the future will your work survive. That is to say that when I work on a problem, I start with a very specific thing, very answer to a very specific question. What is the self-heating in a FinFET transistor and this and that? But then once the answer begins to sort of crystallize and gel a little, I begin to look back 30, 40, 50, 60 years in the literature to see how where there are interesting or innovative ideas that can answer a more grander question. Not only that, yes, I'm answering the question in a narrow context of a FinFET transistor and self-heating, but is that the answer to that question, is it sort of, the question has to be timely, but the answer has to be timeless. That is the essence of getting a lot of citation at the end of the day, that if your answer inspires others to sort of build on top of your work, that your work by itself is not the end, but it is the beginning, a stepping stone for a lot of other people build their work, that is when your work will be remembered and cited often. So this is, I think, the fundamental principle. Of course, there are other strategies that you can use. You should have your LinkedIn strategy, with your student placement strategy, with your conference strategy, with your, your talks that you give, that strategy and the journal strategy all together, so that your work gets sort of broader exposure. But beyond the exposure, I think that what I said in the beginning, that the answer has to be deep and it has to be in some way timeless. Otherwise, the citation cannot go very far because others couldn't really build on top of your work. Why would they cite you? So that's it. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. So probably I'm not seeing anyone is being interested to ask any question directly. May I change the language actually? আমরা একটু যদি বাংলা এবং যদি মনে হয় কেউ ইন্সপায়ার্ড হতে পারেন, বিশেষ করে আমাদের জুনিয়র রিসার্চার যারা, তারা যদি বাংলায় কোশ্চেন করতে চান, আপনারা কেউ প্লিজ আপনারা বাংলাতে করতে পারেন, কোনো সমস্যা নেই। হ্যাঁ, আরেকটা কোশ্চেন, খুব রিলেভেন্ট একটা কোশ্চেন আছে, এটা আমরা একটু ডিসকাস করেছি, তারপর আমি আবার জিজ্ঞেস করতেছি একটু, যে one of the audience asked, does Q1, Q2, Q3 percentile matter so much in this situation? Maybe Professor Tariq Rahman, so you can add something, your comments. So this quartile actually, Q1, Q2, Q3, does it matter actually anything?
I think the answer is already given by previous discussion, that it's about the quality of the work, and this Q1, Q2, all those things are the journal metrics. It's not the metrics of the paper that you publish. It's not the quality of the paper that you are doing it. But the reality is that, although I humbly disagree with some of the points that some of you raised it, that the everywhere in the world is not following the same standard that you follow in United States or United Kingdom, right? So for example, even in Malaysia, even the topmost universities, they look at the issue that how many papers you have published in Q1 journals, and then how many times your paper is cited in, and so on. So all those things are, and how many papers also you are publishing there. So those things are counted there. So it really, depends on the university that where you are working and where you want to work. So this is how it works. I don't think that in my experience that everyone follows the same principle, whether they will count Q1 or they will not count it or not.
Okay, thank you, Sir. Just আমি একটু এক্সপেরিয়েন্স শেয়ার করি। আমি যে রিসার্চটা করি, আমার রিসার্চে আমার সবচেয়ে রিলিভেন্ট জার্নাল হচ্ছে মনে করি জার্নাল অফ অ্যাপ্লাইড ফিজিক্স, যেটা হচ্ছে আমেরিকান ইনস্টিটিউট অফ ফিজিক্স থেকে পাবলিশ হয়। তো আমার কাজগুলো আমি প্রথমেই চেষ্টা করি হয়তো জাস্ট জার্নাল অফ অ্যাপ্লাইড, আমি অ্যাপ্লাইড ফিজিক্স লেটার্সে পাবলিশ করতে পারি না, আমার হয়তো পোটেনশিয়ালিটি নেই এখান থেকে, বাট আমি জার্নাল অফ অ্যাপ্লাইড ফিজিক্সে পাবলিশ করতে পারি। বাট এবার আমার রিসেন্ট একটা কাজ আমি জার্নাল অফ অ্যাপ্লাইড ফিজিক্সে সাবমিট করতে গেলাম। আমার স্টুডেন্ট হি ইজ অলসো টিচার অফ এ পাবলিক ইউনিভার্সিটি। আমার বললো স্যার এটা তো কিউটি জার্নাল। কিউটি জার্নাল আমার তার প্রমোশন আছে সামনে, ওইখানে যারা প্রমোশন এখন যারা আছেন তারা এখন ইম্প্যাক্ট ফ্যাক্টর বুঝেন, ওনারা জার্নাল অ্যাপ্লাইড ফিজিক্সের ইম্প্যাক্ট ফ্যাক্টর হচ্ছে 2 পয়েন্ট সামথিং, সে যে জার্নাল প্রেফার করছে ওদের ইম্প্যাক্ট হচ্ছে 4 পয়েন্ট সামথিং। বাট আমি আমার ভিতর থেকে আমি এখনো বিশ্বাস করি 4.6, আমাকে যদি বলা হয় দুইটা থেকে একটা চুজ করতে, আমি অবশ্যই 2.2 এর জার্নাল অফ অ্যাপ্লাইড ফিজিক্স নিব। এটা কিউ2 হলে এটাই নিব আমি, বাট আমার স্টুডেন্টের জন্য আমাকে এটা স্যাক্রিফাইস করতে হচ্ছে। বাট এই স্টেজটা সামহাও আমাদেরকে একটু অ্যাকসেপ্ট করতে হবে। আমাদের যারা আপনারা যেটা বলছেন যে আমাদের পলিসি মেকিং এ যারা আছেন, এই জিনিসটা যেন আমাদের উপরে চেপে না বসে, যে এই ইম্প্যাক্ট ফ্যাক্টর এবং Q1, Q2, Q3। হ্যাঁ, আদারওয়াইজ আমি এখনো বিশ্বাস করি যে আমার কাজটা যদি জার্নাল অফ অ্যাপ্লাইড ফিজিক্সে পাবলিশ হতো, ওটার অডিয়েন্স কিংবা ওইখানে যদি একটাও সাইটেশন হয়, তা আমার কাছে মনে হতো যে রাইট অডিয়েন্সে যাবে, ওইখানে যে রিভিউয়ার আছেন তারা হয়তো রাইট রিভিউয়ার আমি পেতাম। হ্যাঁ, বাট এটা আমাকে জাস্ট এরকম এক্সাম্পল অনেক আছে। জাস্ট এক্সাম্পল, আমার নিজের এক্সাম্পল দিলাম, দেয়ার আর লটস অফ এক্সাম্পলস। সো আমরা এই ব্যাপারটা থেকে আসলে একটু বের হতে চাই। বিশেষ করে আমরা যখন আমরা ন্যাশনাল ইয়াং একাডেমিতে ডিসকাস করি, আমরা এটা খুব ভালোভাবে আমরা বিশেষ করে প্রফেসর আব্দুল শামসুদ্দিন তারেক, যে আমরা যেটা বলি যে আসলে আমরা ম্যাট্রিক ওকে, ম্যাট্রিক আমরা কনসিডার করব, বাট ম্যাট্রিক যেন আমাদের উপর চেপে না বসে। এই ব্যাপারটাই আসলে বিশেষ করে আতল করিম স্যার তো অনেক লেখালেখি করেন এবং অনেক জায়গায় স্পিচ দেন স্যার, এবং বাংলাদেশের এমন ইনফরমেশন আছে যেগুলো আমরা জানি না, বাট হি হিমসেলফ নোস দ্যাট ভেরি ওয়েল। তো স্যারকে রিকোয়েস্ট করবো এই ব্যাপারটা যেন স্যার একটু হাইলাইট করেন, বিশেষ করে আমাদের সিনিয়ররা যেন এই ব্যাপারটাতে একটু এখন যে আসলে আমার ছাত্র যদি আমাকে জিজ্ঞেস করে আমি স্যার কোন জার্নাল সাবমিট করবো, আমি ফার্স্ট বলবো যে প্লিজ সার্চ হুইচ ইজ দ্য মোস্ট রিলিভেন্ট জার্নাল ফর ইউর রিসার্চ। সবচেয়ে রিলিভেন্ট জার্নালটা কোনটা তোমার রিসার্চে, তোমার কাজের ক্ষেত্রে, এটাই আমার ফার্স্ট আনসার থাকে। তো স্যার কিছু অ্যাড করতে চাচ্ছেন, আতলকুন স্যার আপনি যদি কিছু অ্যাড করেন যে আসলে এই ট্রেন্ড থেকে আমরা কি করে বের হয়ে আসবো।
I had been doing exactly what you're doing as a researcher. I always did whatever you think is most relevant for your work. You already know which articles did you use to work on it. That's the best venue, because you are borrowing from work that was done by somebody else or many other people in a particular journal. That more likely is most appropriate. Yes, you can go still higher, but I think that's more appropriate. It also tells that that journal is likely going to publish work in that particular area. So that's partly our saying. As an administrator, I had a different kind of answer. And I've been doing it forever in Sabo. So a young faculty member comes and says, tell us how many papers I need to publish, what journal. And again, how do I know which journal is better for you or not? So my typical answer is go and figure out who in your department got the last promotion. And your goal is to beat that person. And if you can, more likely you are on the right track. But I will extend this further. For example, in the area of business, I found this is a information I did not know of it 10 years ago, that in the business world, what journal are you going to publish? It is not based on Elsevier or anybody. It is what is called ABDC journal, Australian Business Deans Association rated journal. I did not know of this. And they have Class A, Class B, Class C journals that gets cooked out by this Deans Association in Australia. and that these business journals essentially are considered by everywhere else, including in the business schools in the United States. I've checked with many business schools the same. So it's never the same, but I think people set on a particular criteria. Unfortunately, you can't deviate from that. Now, what is done by ABDC? I don't think you're going to find it in the College of Health Science or somewhere else. They may not have these criteria. But again, I just wanted to say, push ourselves. And I think the venue is the one where you think is the best journal, more likely where your references were actually published, that will give you a sense or comfort level that that's where more likely is your best venue. The question of publication charge and all of these things are going to come. Now things have changed, but I remember there are journals I submitted and all I made is a declaration later on that we are a non-profit organization and I have no money to pay for. That didn't stop me from publishing. In other words, once I gave some kind of declaration, I'm sure this day it may not work, but in my days this worked too. But I think looks like payment is a major thing. Even in the professional society governed journals, there is particularly a paid charge, let's say $100 or $150. These are genuine things. I don't think you can do without it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.